I'd like to welcome our next speaker in this session, JP Prendergast. And JP's background, he says here he's in the middle of a 26-year PhD in renewable integration. I'm sure that denotes the potential for that rather than the difficulties in it. He's specialising in developing highly innovative groups, companies in the renewable energy sector, second-generation biorefining with application in the biotechnology and pharmaceutical sectors. He's working with third-level institutes to optimise lignocellulosic materials, I wish I'd read this beforehand, such as spent brewery grains, well, I can understand that, from beer productions, materials, dry distilled grains from ethanol production and lactose whey into high-value biochemicals, which I'm not going to list. He sits on a number of steering groups, from Renewable Gas Forum to Centre for Integrated Technology, Energy Technology, Industry Advisory Group, and the Co-op, and he's worked in both the US and Ireland. And his talk is entitled Climate Change Responsibility at Community Level. Thanks very much, JP.
Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm here on behalf of our co-op in Claremorris, which is called Claremorris and Western District Energy Co-op. The reason I suppose we kicked into this project was part of our own work was awareness within communities of what is renewable energy, the impact on the society and community, and how can we impact on climate change. And so in doing so, we formulated a kind of a working group within the town and got very much involved with committees within the country and other co-ops, and looking to see how we can integrate different communities and working together and complementing the work that's, I suppose, has been done out there. So when I kicked into this, first of all, it was kind of going to go into where am I going to start off here, because I'm coming from a community element and side of it, and the first question you ask is, there's a phenomenal amount of talk going on the upper level of policy, government, politics, etc., on climate change. But the problem is most communities aren't aware of the impact within their own homes of what this is. And so the biggest issue come to date has been, well, how do we deal with this within communities? So on this lower level that we're at, and we're at a common level here, how can we as individuals start working to perhaps deal with this element of climate change? And I reference here Mary Robinson simply because of the 1.5 degree element of change that's happened in February and now higher in March, which both Johns had discussed this morning. So I'm going to pretty much move on that. I borrowed this from a guy called Paul Kenny, who is at Tipperary Energy. And he presents this as basically that your goose is cooked. He presents this in element of climate change. And it's kind of the opening slide of a lot of his presentation to understand where exactly we are at this moment in time. So we're at the bottom of the summit, and as a community, what can we do? And what can we do in Claremorris, for example? And that's what I'm going to try and explain what we're doing here. So I use my mum is 77. She worked on the farm all her life, and I find it fierce entertaining now, because it's got to the stage where you were younger, you couldn't say certain things, and now I go home and every second day there's a dirty joke from my mother, and I'm going, geez, ma'am, no dirty jokes. And she doesn't care anymore. She doesn't want to know about impacts of societies. She just wants to know about her children going forward and where her community is. And I ask her simple questions. I go, do you understand climate change? And do you understand the impact of climate change within the community? And specifically, what we find is that there's a variance between the scientific work we do and the community acceptance and awareness. And in doing so, we often look towards science for the answer. And in doing so, we kind of look for the variance of what the answer from science is, and we adapt that answer for our own benefit. So what's happened is there's going to be an element whereby we as individuals have to take some responsibility in towns and communities. So if I talk to my mother and I look at community perception, I bring up this one first on wind turbines. And I say to my mum, we're talking about wind turbines, which is one of our probably natural abilities to produce power. And she'll immediately go, no, can't do that. Normally people say we can't have wind here, or there's a perception we can't have wind there. So then I go on, for example, and say, okay, ma'am, we can't do that. What about if we look at combined heat and power, wood chip? And what if we look at heat and power? And immediately it comes back of, no, can't do that. because basically some people want it and some people don't. So there's a perception that maybe this is applicable or not applicable to our society. And then I look at biogas, right? So we have a natural waste, organic waste that we produce. Well, can we use that waste to produce, methane gas or biogas for our communities, for district heating, etc.? And immediately there's this sign comes up going, no, this is quite toxic, and we don't understand it and we don't want it in our village. So the NIMBYism comes into play. We mentioned tidal. Well, at this moment in time, we don't know where that's going. So as much as we're talking about this and opportunity for communities, is for a period of time when wind was taking off, there was an opportunity for communities to take ownership in some of those wind projects. The problem was the community weren't aware of the ownership, and B, they hadn't the access to finance, and C, they hadn't the access to the expertise to get into those projects. And so as we're still contemplating what technology to use within societies, we've got this situation of we're still effectively causing this to happen. And I'll give you a real kicker on this one. At the moment, solar panels are becoming quite thrown about the place at the moment for an alternative renewable energy. And at this moment in time, there is about 400 applications gone into various councils in Ireland for solar power, coming about 2 gig of capacity within the grid. And at this stage, you'd think that communities, after learning the time about wind, would say, look, can we get involved in solar projects? Can we co-invest in a solar project? Can we have ownership within the community? Can we use that power within community? And what's happened in the meantime is, as we're talking about it, all these guys are coming in from the UK and from Spain, and the multinationals in Dublin are putting these licenses in, or what we call connections to grid. And what they're doing is they're excluding communities of ownership on those systems. So this is the problem, right? If we're going to be constantly falling behind and waiting for things to happen as communities, we'll never go forward, and nor will we be able to support, I suppose, the ability of addressing climate change, community taking ownership of renewable energy, displacing that energy within your community, and communities benefiting from that. Following on from work we've done is that there is a lack of connection between policy and politics and community, and there's a lack of connection between communicating the benefits of each type of ability out there in renewable energy. And for as long as that exists, we will always be falling behind in communities in taking ownership and responsibility for renewable energy and climate change. And so one of the most important things we try to do is we try to look at, what can we do as communities? And I'm going to throw 2 possible ideas out there. So farmers were asked to grow willow tree at one stage, miscanthus. I don't know, remember, you grow miscanthus, you get so much per ton, you use it for renewable energy. And so what happened was, the issues with the miscanthus was you were given a subsidy to grow it and a subsidy to burn it. And so suddenly the emphasis went on to willow, right? And I don't know for the people who are very aware of willow, but willow has exceptional value in itself, whereby you produce a thing called salicylic acid, and it's natural aspirin, right? So imagine if I was a farmer and I'm getting €38 per ton for my willow, and I sell this to a plant. Well, imagine if I could take that material, send it to a second party who had extracted that salicylic acid, right? I can produce pharmaceutical products. I can produce a natural aspirin. I can produce a dermatology cream. I can produce something psoriasis, all from natural material. And the transition, you see, from the science to the community to understand this level of understanding still isn't there. And this is the kicker, right? If I took my salicylic acid, the mechanism to which I take that out, it's quite simple in ethanol, I could actually technically use the remaining material of that timber for biogas generation rather than burning my tree. Okay? So there's alternatives out there what you can do. But the second reason I brought this up here was the organic farming. So my cousin John is an organic farm in Ballymahon, and I think he milks about 65 cows. He has 3 key problems. 1, his fertilizer costs him about 3 times the amount of money, and he can't get it because they're organic. 2, his feed for his animals, it costs him 3 times the amount of money because he needs a certain type of organic feed. And 3, he's got a surplus of slurry on his farm that he can't use. So picture this. Imagine if I took that slurry and I put it into a tank and I produce a natural gas or extract my methane. Imagine if I extract the CO2 from that and run it to an algae or a microalgae farm, right? I can now produce organic feed for my animals from that waste material. Or I can use it as a CO2 sink, or I can use it as part of my input back into my AD plant. We're very good at putting the blame somewhere else, right? The technologies are there. There are ways of doing things. It's how we adapt and understand them is the only way we're going to address problems like this. And as a community, we all sit here in the same hall in Claremorris. If I sit in Donegal or wherever we give this talk, I have to say, we all have to put our hands up here and say, there has to be a solution. And there is solutions. It's just how we work them and how we work them together, perhaps, in different mechanisms. So, if willow came into play and suddenly I could produce salicylic acid at what we call a short rotational crop for 2 years, and I can produce different elements to it, now suddenly we can look at things differently in a positive light. So there's a need. There's a need for integrated vision, understanding energy systems, and also understanding how this applies not only for electricity, but for heat and for transport. As a consequence, Sustainable Energy Ireland have formed this, what we call Sustainable Energy Authority, of a Sustainable Energy Community, have now in the last week announced mentors for communities. And they will come down here and they will work with the community in understanding to optimize your renewable energy generation within your town, how you may adapt what we call a thing called district heating, which I pipe hot water to locations, how I might integrate solar or hydro, and they will look at the funding of that project for 3 years. So now the communication is starting to come from top down to the communities and saying, we want to help you, you've got to come to us and ask for the help. And in doing so, communities can vary from, pretty much sports clubs, GA clubs, wherever feasible we can adopt this energy. And I want to put this in perspective. I always take this map of Ireland here, some of my students in UIG, and I say to them, we may be seen as a small island, right? And we look like a small island here. And they say, what can you do? And what change can we make per head capita of our CO2 emissions are? And I go back down to Aran Islands, right? Aran Islands are in a situation that in the next 10 years they'll become energy independent, right? And I go back out my map again, let's go right back out again. I can't even see that. This is what this community is doing. So if they can do it, why can't we do it? And why can't different communities do this? And I'm going to explain to you about how we formed. So about 1.5 years ago, we formed a co-op in Claremorris. We formed it for 2 reasons. One, because we had projects to come to the town which were pretty knocked on the head. They were knocked on the head for 2 reasons. One, because of education and awareness, and 2, that the means in which they were, I suppose, anticipated by the community was incorrect. So we had groups which were misinformed. So in doing so, we opened an office in the town called the Claremorris Western District Energy Co-op, right beside Blue Thunder, and wants a few chips, you can pop into the office, right? And we started mixing with each one of the groups. We had Duncan down for a day, and we met with each one of the groups in Claremorris, and we formed this co-op. This is our badge. We said Western District because we're trying to help as many communities as we can. So whatever we do, we will mirror in other communities and show you what we've done and how we've done it. And it's to your benefit how you use that and how you want to grow that community. So Claremorris town itself, basically we have 3 projects that we've worked with in the last year. Our first project is what we call district heating. So district heating is where a mechanism whereby I put a pipe in the ground and I pipe hot water from one location to another. It's quite unique, right? Because whatever produces that hot water may change in 5 years' time, but the value is your pipe. So if I produce hot water from a wood chip boiler and 2 years' time produce it from a biogas boiler, I still use the same piping to each location that uses that heat. So if there's a new housing estate going up, right, you would supply the heat to the housing estate and you would concentrate the energy generation at one point. So in this case in Claremorris, we ran a project right beside a swimming pool and we did a feasibility with Tipperary Energy. So Tipperary Energy is down there south, is probably one of the most progressive energy groups out there who are quite willing to meet any community to work with and show you what you can do in your renewable energies. And we generated a map of the town which defined what we call heat loads. Where could we use our heat? So in doing so, we could map out each building within the town and its heat load. And from its heat load, we could design a system which became financially viable to use to put pipes down and connect all these buildings together. The kicker was, we knew we had to partner with someone, so we did a 50-50 joint venture with Mayo County Council. And the reason was twofold. The relationship brought pros to both sides of this. The council would own the swimming pool and they own 2 buildings. They would give us a contract for a period of time, so we would be guaranteed an income from the heat we generate. But 2, they would help us build the network within the town. And so we partnered with Mayo County Council on this project on a scale that allowed the project to go ahead, and it's helped give us a security and stability in the project generation itself. The second project we've been doing is biogas demonstration. So this goes back to your slurry tank, and this is your farmer. We're really interested in just the farming slurries. That's really our key interest, because there's a number of farmers around Claremorris who have an excess amount of slurry that they can't use. And that has a direct impact on nitrates and certain elements. But with biogas, basically you take your slurries, you put them into a tank. It's called anaerobic digestion, and it's basically over 30 days produces that methane, or that biogas. So it produces biogas, which you then extract your methane from. So the co-op went to Gas Networks Ireland, and we built this trailer. This guy here, right? And in this trailer, we have a small little AD system, and we collect the digestate, which is basically the remaining material after 30 days. And what we've done with this trailer is we've gone to, I think, 40 schools in Ireland and showed children what biogas and what AD is all about. This trailer has enabled us to educate our community on the benefits of what biogas is. And it has done so in the means that the community owned this project. So what we were able to do with this was we were able to form a relationship with the Renewable Gas Forum Group as a partnership to help us develop these projects. To the extent we have now a second trailer being built. And the second trailer is more to the agricultural sector. Because when that gas comes out of my tank, so I take my tank, and out comes my biogas, I have to extract the methane from that. If I can extract the methane through what we call a little water scrubber, which is this guy here, we can scrub out the CO2, and then we can run it to a algae-based little unit in the back of the trailer. So what we're doing is we're demonstrating how we can take out the CO2 and how we can actually harvest that CO2, as at the same time producing that gas in cylinders to go into our district heating project. So now there's a mechanism to support the district heating from a community basis. Just one work we do at UCC, it's just interest following from John this morning, which is the source of security supply. One of the things that they are looking for is using grass for anaerobic digestion. And ironically, when you take out the whole dairy element of farming in Ireland, the most surplus amount of that potential grass is up in the west here. And I'm just saying as a surplus, and that's outside of dairy, but there's a possibility for small communities to optimize that for their AD. Our third project, if it wasn't bad enough that we had 2, right? Our third project is a solar farm. And this is what we did. So down south, there's a group called Temple Dairy. Temple Dairy spent 11 years putting up a wind turbine. And in doing so, as a community, they built the wind turbine. They had now generated a cash flow. And we again partnered with Temple Dairy to put in an application for a 3 megawatt solar farm in Claremorris town. And what we've done is, that's been done before Christmas, is we've now working to what we call a connection to grid. What Temple Dairy did was they helped us with the financing while we did the work on the ground. So now the co-op has not just got a biogas potential, it has a district heating potential, but now we've got a solar potential. And that solar potential is now giving us an amount of revenue for the next 20 years to which the co-op will then regenerate back into the town. And suddenly we won't be relying on handouts anymore. We can work on our own steam and generating projects for the good of renewable energy and climate change. Our goal in Claremorris is quite simple. This is called a microgrid, right? A microgrid is the ability to take in power within our town and then sell it within the town. In our case, we're going to be a virtual microgrid. It's not going to be technically the wiring. But these projects are now going to give us an ability to take that power we can generate within the community and we can sell it to the community. And so with another partnership under CRESS, under Temple Dairy, there's now going to be an ability for communities to buy and trade power, right? And this is just happening as it stands now. So in the next 6 months, Claremorris will actually have 20 of its own houses on its own power. So a community is now taking ownership of its power, and it's the power we generate. And so what we're trying to do is, as a community, by taking responsibility and optimizing on renewable generation, we displace this whole fossil fuel generation. We're not going to be very popular with the ESBs of the world. We're not going to be very popular with the electricities of the world. But you know something, they'll get by and they'll find something else to do. But in our case, this community can do this, Temple can do that, as can Aran Islands. Will you pick 10 more communities that look in the same means and same way of a possibility and grow that possibility? Well, then we're making a difference from ground up. We may not answer the same level of requirement from a whole industrial scale, but we're making a difference and we're starting now. I'm going to pretty much finish this because I have a tendency talking too much. But in any case, renewable energy is an integral part of our climate change strategy, right? And the diversity and the digital diversity which it brings to Ireland makes complete contribution to the secure and energy supplies, but it generates jobs, it keeps people at home, it builds communities, and it builds green communities. I always present this. We have two ways of looking at things. We can be these two boys here who end up fighting from this side and fighting from that side till the end of the day there's no space left between, or we get communities that start working together. And if we do that, well then maybe we've made a small bit of an impact for our generation to come and their generation also. My last slide, start by doing what's necessary, then do what's possible, and then suddenly you can do the impossible. Thank you.
Thank you very much for a really inspiring talk. It was new material to me, maybe not so to some of you, hopefully not. You'll be more involved than I am, but I just think this is an example of what can be done when people get together in a very positive frame of mind, facing up to the challenges within their own community, working within their own area, and looking on it in a positive way. And I know I'm just blown away by what you've done. And hopefully you've sown the seeds for what can be done in this community and in other wider communities. So I just want to thank you. Even before we take questions, just another round of applause for just the whole idea of what he's doing. Does anyone from the Headford area have any, who wants to from Headford jump in and say we're going to do this? Okay.
Well, I'm not from Headford as it happens. So but I suppose just figuring out that route of the community buy-in, it may be just that it's a positive story to sell, but I'm sure you had some local obstacles along the way as well. And how did you get people on board?
Yes, yeah, we did. Yeah, we had, we would have had a certain amount of business in the town saying that we don't need, renewables, we can use our gas in town. Use natural gas, it's there, we should be using that. That was difficult to take that because technically if you look at the price of gas and the price of oil, it's an extremely difficult one to compete with. So what you're doing is, with these guys, is we're now 15 people, and the 15 people got together with these ideas. We've kept it to the 15 with another 20 to come on board now in the next probably 3 months. And what we're doing is, and what we found is that trailer unit that we bring from the schools is bringing parents into us now, and the kids are talking about it. And the talk that you give to a community suddenly feeds back. But the trailer has been phenomenal. Leading by example is so crucial, because being able to show what this can do rather than talking about it, there's a touchy-feel thing here. And even the whole dynamics of the agricultural side has suddenly taken interest with Gas Networks Ireland, because now those guys are saying, the farmers are calling, and farmers aren't asking, how do you do this? It's, when can we do this? And suddenly the only restrictions that we have is government policy. That's the renewable heat incentive, or, for example, the gate fees accordingly. That's the hindrance. That's the problem we have. And if any obstacles come towards us, that's thrown at us. So I think there's a vision, and there is determination, and there's a lot of hard work. But certainly you're going to meet opposition everywhere, and everyone has a right to their opinion. And I think everyone has a right to, communicate that accordingly. But when you have a majority of people starting to support these projects, you find that has suddenly the roll-on effect, and you've been fair about it. So we're not pushing this on anyone. We're teaching, and as we're teaching, we pull them in. That's how we've done it.
Cheers, many thanks, and it's great to see the grassroots initiative. I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts on this TTIP agreement that's going to try and strangle all local initiatives, or whether you've looked at that?
I'm aware of it, and no, we haven't. We've just done our own thing. What we've done is, if we were to sit down and look at every policy document that came out, which was restrictive in its approach, we probably wouldn't be anywhere now at this stage in time. So we did what we call the blinker policy. So when you put the blinkers on your horse, well, that's just what we've done. We put our blinkers on, we know where we want to go without any, and we've done this without government support. So what the trailer did for us, ironically, generated revenue and allowed us to use that then start doing other projects. The problem with policy at the moment is, and there's a number of problems here, you have sustainability engineering with a very limited budget trying to do everything, right? And then you have directive from politics and a whole element of policy whereby there's still no directive whatsoever. And I'll give you an example. We met up with SAI last day, great gang of people if you get to know them and work well with them. And we asked for a decision on one element, and this was the answer. Well, we don't have a Taoiseach, so we don't have a minister, and we don't have a CEO, so we can't do anything at the moment, right? So you're saying, I'm bursting my ass to come up to you in Dublin, right, which has probably cost me a day of my work, to try and give you something we can do, and this is what's happening from top down. And I know we've had pictures of Kenny up here in a situation, and I'm not political in any way in form, but unless these people start copping on to what we're about, we're never going to succeed. And for as long as we keep talking about these things, at that level, we're not going to succeed at the same level. We can make everyone aware of it. It's down here is what we have to start working, and you lead by example. And if one community can lead by example, let that go to 5 communities. And if 5 communities can go to 20 communities. Imagine if this CREST thing works. Imagine if, and it's not imagine, it's going to work. We will have the ability for communities to buy and sell their own power outside of the ESB. So give an example. If you have 200 houses on this, the community will probably make 10 or 12,000 euro for themselves that they can recirculate into the economy. So here's a tool for the community to take off and do something. And this is what it's about. And so it's my blinker policy. And I read enough policy papers. If we were to rely on that level of policy expertise, we're just never going to get anywhere. We've got to work from the ground up and look at the whole impact of climate versus renewable energy and community. Yeah, we're not building an infrastructure for electricity.
No, but how do you link in if they don't want you to link in?
So the ESB are one element, but the grid is another side of it. So the whole element of grid is what we put our power onto. So everyone has that entitlement to put this on what we call the national grid, and we can take off that grid. So this is how it'll happen. We will sell our power onto the grid and get our return, and we then take that off the grid. And I'll give you another example with gas networks, and this is an intriguing one for what we call direct injection. There's a phenomenal amount of multinationals out there looking for that biomethane. They want to turn green without the hassle of bringing wood chips to their buildings. So what gas networks are trying to do, but with extreme difficulty, is they want to look at injecting that methane into the gas grid, right? And then you can take it out somewhere else. And I'll give you a really good example of what community can do. So one day we're in Claremorris, we've Gas Networks Ireland, we've got Friends of the Earth, Kate. Fantastic guys, right? Gas networks come down going, I don't know how this is going to go because we're gas networks and this is Friends of the Earth. This is how the conversation turned out. We can take biogas or biomethane and put it into your grid, and your grid can give it somewhere else. Suddenly, gas networks were working with Friends of the Earth. They were accommodating that renewable energy source just by conversation. So it's thinking here. It's combined thinking this is all about. The opportunities will present if you know how to do it and who can do it, and it's a whole network ability. So as with the grid and buying and selling power, this will be announced. We now have 20 houses on the system being run at the moment. And I'll tell you what our problems are. Is that the 20 houses that were taken off this grid and put onto our what we call the CREST system, which is going to be community energy, they had Bord Gáis and ESB onto them the following day, ringing them to come back, offering every incentive possible to come back onto their system. And the only way we could work this was the cooperative, which we are, that person became a member of that cooperative. It's like your dairy element. Your cooperative becomes their dairy for milk, but at this stage, think of it as power. So then they get their dividend at the end of the year for that setup. And that is the only mechanism that we'll be able to build this on. Otherwise, if it's not a community-based project, the board goshes and the ESBs will take those users back. So yeah, and the more to come probably next 3 months I sit on that thing, yeah. We have a license, yeah. There's a license applied for and obtained. No, there's a group that has that license, community group, that will work with the communities. Correct. DCNR. Basically, you have your license got for trading your power onto your grid and taking it off the grid. So basically, there's a license to trade like the ESB or electricity. So that license is out there for a community now. Yeah. Yeah. So there's well, I suppose it's not manufacturing, it's really extracting it. So what we have is we have 3 farmers who have slurry tanks. So what we're doing is we're taking that slurry and running to an AD tank beside the slurry system, and we're then extracting that methane, cleaning it and compressing it. And we then use that. The idea is as follows. So this is what we're trying to do, and in fairness to Mayo County Council, we have an ability to take that gas, right, from say 3 farmers and supply that gas to 5 communities for district heating. So we're reusing that within district heating for communities. So it's actually, and what you're doing for the farmers, a number of things. Independent of the safety element of methane, independent of that methane being the emissions of that methane, what you're doing is actually generating revenue for the farmer at the same time. So we have 3 groups working at the moment on that methane extraction.
Can I just ask you, this sounds a brilliant idea, and I'm just wondering, is there any discussion about it being replicated? I mean, is there any idea that, say, councils or would have funding available for communities to you know, are you a pilot project, or are you?
No, we're commercial. We're commercial.
You're commercial, yeah, but it's the kind of thing that it's not much good one little community doing it. You obviously understand the science, and that's the important thing. I just wonder, if other communities wanted to do it, they'd have to get help in a way.
Yeah. So
do you know what I mean? You obviously have all the experience.
Well, one of the things with SCAI is that they're now giving mentors out for 3 years and supporting communities on that. So, for example, if you felt a weakness in the community was the technical implementation of this, they will give you a technical person, what we call a mentor, for 1 or 2 years to work with the community and build up capacity. Okay. So it's under the new SEC scheme, a group called Ruth Bugge is doing it, or Bugge, yes, so she's involved in that. So, yeah, that facility will become available.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I ask where we could see your AD, the trailer?
We can bring it up some morning. Park it in town. Absolutely no problem. Yeah.
If we came to Clare Morris, could we see it there?
I'll tell you what, I'll give you one more example. If you have the national school here, we'll bring it up to the national school, park it up for a few hours and show them how it works, and anybody can come see it at the same time, so we can make maybe knock-on effect of, because we're all volunteers, it's kind of our work days, but if we'd come up, park it, work with the kids for 3-4 hours like we did in Claremorris, and anybody who wants to see it then can also see it at the same time. So we kill 2 birds with 1 stone in just showing what AD is all about. Yeah. So absolutely, very well, absolutely no problem to organise that.
And yeah. What happens to the residue when you've taken the methane
out?
So
this is called digestate, is what it's called. It's what remains from it. And it depends. We use grass and slurry, so basically we can reuse that. There are certain directives.
So you can spread the residue back on the
Correct.
field.
So because it's grass-based, we're doing that. Now, we use it within our own farm. We're restricted. There's restrictions to how you can do that and how it's done. We're doing that. It's because it's such a small amount. It's the best. I mean, from a whole nitrous directive itself, it's a phenomenal value of material. So one of the guys, Pat Neary, who's our CEO, is also the farmer, takes that digestive and he uses it himself on his own farm.
And is it as effective as the raw slurry?
It's much more effective because it's concentrated. More? Yeah, he finds much more. It's concentrated. Yeah. But I'll give you something that's happening at the moment. Just on that one, there's research going on at the moment that's now introducing natural material on top of that digestate, which allows it to gel. Which means it takes it longer for it to dissolve on the farm, which means from a nitrates or ammonia you get a much more effective means of fertilization.
It's more slow release.
So there's lots of good things happening out there, but I think from this project, what we're doing is we have the ability just to show you can take methane, you can take CO2. I mean, seaweed is phenomenal value. I mean, seaweed is a phenomenal element, and suddenly if we produce that algae on a farm, you can produce an animal feed, or in our case, we use an iodine extraction for pharmaceutical products.
So the algae can be fed?
So you run through
Or
tubes.
used as a
Yeah, you run the
fertiliser.
CO2 through the tubes, yeah, and you capture that CO2, so it's a sink, a carbon sink.
Brilliant. Thank you.
So, okay, thanks.
Hi, JP.
Thank you very much.
JP, can I ask you a quick one?
Just the last question, yeah.
You mentioned about getting the chemicals from willow
Yeah.
before you actually use it in the biomass burning.
Yep.
What is the value added to the process of willow from the extraction of the chemicals before you actually use it as a biomass?
When I say willow, this is what we call short rotational crops, which is a 2 or 3 year crop that's recycled by a farmer for 20 years. In the bark of that material is salicylic acid. And if you, for example, the easiest way of extracting is you take off that bark and you soak it in ethanol for, say, 24 hours. Technically, if a farmer was to sell that willow at this moment in time to a power generation plant, they're getting about €38 a tonne for that. What you could technically do is bring that to 50 to 55 euro a tonne on that value. And so now it'll become economical for the farmer to look at willow once again. The biggest issue at the moment is that it's all one-dimensional. It's wood for burning. But wood has a phenomenal amount of sugar, C5, C6 sugars. It has a cellulose and a hemicellulose content. And they haven't been able to crack that up to now. But if the time was put in as much energy into that, it opens up a lot of possibilities here. And you see, this is the thing about pharmaceutical. If I took a litre of that salicylic acid, it's worth to me 5 tonnes or 6 tonnes of that willow for burning. And because it goes to a refinery, so what happens is there's lignin, and it's a glue that holds it together. If you open that up, the material left could actually be run through a digester and used back as a fertilizer on the farm rather than burning that good material. So there's different, I think the problem has been with the big multinationals is that the synthetically produced materials versus the natural material has always been much cheaper. But what you're finding in mainland Europe now is that people are looking for green products and they're looking for green substitutes. And it's starting to come back into the market again, and this is where the interest is in these materials.
Is there anybody actually doing it at the moment?
Yeah, we're actually doing it in UL at the moment. So we've actually worked on products ourselves that we can do that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.